All right, Happy New Year. So today's the 2nd, and just wanted to show this year's project. So this year, we're gonna be starting soybeans, and we kind of knew eventually we'd want to go to a 6-row planter probably for corn anyways. So to kind of be cost effective, we opted for doing the soybeans in 30-inch rows as well, just to keep down on cost, have one planter, and go that route. So I probably paid too much for this thing, but it was in pretty decent shape, and it was honestly the closest one that was the most feasible, honestly, logistically, to get home. So that was the big reason why I got it. It is set up for a liquid fertilizer. So, but you can see most of the liquid fertilizer equipment's not on it. And we'll go over that in a little bit. But it is a 6-row, narrow, 30-inch row, John Deere 7000. I'm not sure on the year. It's missing the serial number tag. But it's overall fairly decent shape. I mean, it's got some, common wear items, I think, that need to be addressed. But hopefully for soybeans this year, we'll kind of just do a once-over on it and see how it works. As you can see in the background there's our 900 4-row wide cyclo planter, it's Case IH cyclo, which has been a good planter as well. But we knew eventually that we definitely wanted to go to 6-row just for, possible expansion and to keep down on cost with having 2 planters, just go to 1. That way we can do soybeans and corn. Plus the thing of it is looking at drill options. Honestly, drills around here, it seems like they're kind of a hot commodity, and they definitely are fetch a pretty decent price tag on them. So this way we could kind of stick all of our money in one deal and have it try to get it fixed up and working the best it can, best singulation, population, things like that, and not have to worry about multiple pieces of equipment, because storage is kind of tight. So this thing, it's got a couple field modifications, I would say, over the years. The liquid fertilizer setup, it was kind of the reason I bought it, but now, honestly, I'm kind of redoing the whole thing. So initially, as you can see, I don't think these are factory. It had a 300-gallon tank right in the middle of the frame. And the tank, once we got it home, looking at the tank was pretty rough, pretty cracked up. And honestly, the saddle was pretty poor shape once we got the tank off. So at that point, do we replace the tank and the saddle and leave it the way it is, or go to maybe like a more factory setup like the 370-gallon tanks it would have come with from the factory? And what we're opting to do at this point is go to the 370-gallon tank setup, because cost-wise, one 300-gallon tank and saddle versus the 370-gallon tanks and saddles, it's maybe $100 or $200 difference. And, talking with some planter shops and parts people and just kind of personal experience, 300 gallons and just figure roughly 10 pounds a gallon. Now, that's 3,000 pounds right on the center of the frame. That's a lot of weight right there. And, it might affect, planting performance on these outside rows if your middle rows have got all that weight on it. Plus just stress on the frame, I think. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go with more of a factory setup. Found a shop over kind of west central Wisconsin that has got the tanks and the brackets. It's called the Planter Shop. If anyone is in this area looking for planter parts, seems to be one of the only people around, and they had exactly what I need. So that's what we're going to go with. The other reason why I did buy this planter is, the wheels, tires are pretty good shape. And the row units actually themselves are pretty tight. There's not much slop in the arms. There might be some openers and things like that we'll have to get for it. Just kind of common wear items. But other than that, it is fairly clean. It does have some rattle can touch up, which is why you see some of the bright green. And the tongue was kind of rough. It had been jackknifed probably once or twice before. So there was a big crease, actually on the other side. It was on this side, but it doesn't matter because we got a new hitch. So this is actually from Shoop's. And actually now, after doing some research, there's a couple other places online that actually offer a couple different style. They offer, I think this one, which is kind of the thinner one, the lighter duty one, and then they offer a heavier one, probably if you have like a conservation frame, which this one is not. It's the 5x7 main frame, which, you know, it'd be nice to have a conservation frame, but there again, we're pretty light sandy soils, so it's not like we're doing really heavy no-till or something with it where, you know, that frame would benefit us. So this will work just fine, you know, for what we're doing with it. But just wanted to show you kind of what we got going on. The harness for it, it does have a Dickie John monitor. So did test all that out. Had to redo some connections here. And if this gives me issues, it was pretty rough. If this gives me issues, Shoop's actually sells this whole new harness. So, and it's really not that bad. I think it's like 160, maybe it's a little bit more than that, but probably well worth the money if you don't want to be chasing electrical issues constantly. So I know I got another issue with, I had to replace a seed sensor on this row, and it does have, the harness I had to kind of splice it temporarily just to test it. And that's how we found that the sensor itself was bad. But these, I forgot what they call these connectors, Canon connector or something. There's a couple different styles, but Shoop's does sell replacement male and female connectors. So if you ever have issues, you can get those connectors as well from Shoop's. So, but other than that, the liquid fertilizer setup is going to be kind of the biggest undertaking on this thing. I mean, basically besides the actual openers, you know, that's about all that's going to be left, which is kind of unfortunate because that was kind of part of the selling points of the planter, but kind of going through it, ended up kind of, it would have been more of a headache than what it was to get it to work. And the biggest issue was the pump. So I'll show you the pump in a little bit. But the pump was kind of the main reason. Once we'll start looking at the tank, that's when it kind of all had to just kind of get ripped off. So we're gonna go with the factory tank setup, like I said. I'm not sure if these are gonna be in the way or not. I know the front tanks, the mounts, they kind of sit, so the tanks sit kind of forward. So if those are in the way, we'll have to cut them off, clean up the frame a little bit. And then there was some stuff that was kind of added over here. This toolbox was welded on the frame, and then this piece here. So what they had going on was they had like a quick fill hose and a quick fill coupler coming off the side here. And you know, this just kind of looks terrible, honestly. It's just an exhaust U-bolt welded on the side here. And then they had the hose kind of ran right here going up to the tank. So gonna get rid of that and clean it all up and then just go with the factory setup. So back of the planter looks pretty clean. Like I said, it probably needs a few wear parts. There's kind of some funny stuff I think going on with you know, I think that one there, this doesn't look right, you know, when you look at the other ones. And I'm not really an expert with these. I've been around them a little bit, but more familiar with the cyclo, so this is going to be kind of a new thing. But might have to go through, take a look at some of these gears, make sure they're not, some of them are really worn or something. And we'll see if this stuff will get us by, you know, for this year. And then every year, just kind of put a little bit of money to it, keep fixing it up. So like the counter doesn't work, it's all seized up, which is probably kind of to be expected on an older planter, but especially if this thing might have sat outside or something for a while. It looks pretty faded. I mean, everything's tight. You know, I can't move the row units at all, which is, I'd say, a good thing. And the tires are pretty decent. You know, the frame, there's no cracks or issues like that. You know, besides the tongue, which again, the tongues are pretty easy to come by. That's like, well, one of the nice things about going with you know, a planter like this is the aftermarket support for it is excellent, just because it is such a common and popular planter. And that's something to keep in mind. you know, if you're trying to get into farming or you're buying older equipment, you got to really pay attention to part support for things, especially now. Everything's so expensive that you know, it's tough to find stuff. And you know, even these cyclos, good luck with some parts on them. You know, like these hydraulic pumps for the air motors, it's kind of tough to come by. And the seed drums are about, you know, impossible unless you find someone that's got used ones. So just something to keep in mind. One thing, I'll show you on the other side. One other thing, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it because this is the way I got this planter in here. It's super close. So I don't know if it's a common thing or not for these marker arms, is the, pardon the bungee cord that was kind of holding us in when we were taking it down the road. This piece here that the marker arm cylinder is connected to, where it bolts onto the actual frame, those are stripped out. And I'm guessing, I don't know if they got loose, and now I can't move it, but if the bolts got loose and this thing just kind of went, you know, in and out from using the marker arms or something, but we'll probably have to drill them out, put Healy coils or something in there just to keep that supported. I think the markers still would work because that plate comes up and covers that, but you're gonna have some slop. This is probably not gonna be as clean. You know, the other thing you can see somewhere right here, which I may build that up with some weld just so it doesn't end up taking out the hole where the pin goes through. So just some stuff to look out for. And sometimes this is kind of tough to see when the marker's all on it, but obviously to fit this thing in here, you can see it's pretty tight. And I have about the same clearance on the other side. So just to get this thing between the sheds at the house, I had to get the markers off. So we'll get that fixed up. I already bought $1,000 worth of parts from Shoops to get start getting the marker arms all figured out and things like that to get this thing kind of back into shape. So it'll need a little bit of TLC, but I think in the end it'll be kind of a good fit for us. So as I was mentioning, the big reason why I cannot use the liquid fertilizer setup as it came with on this planter is here's the pump. So this is a Hypro hydraulically driven pump. And so you can see there's your hydraulic lines that would go to your tractor. And then that's the actual pump itself. I think it's like 1.5 inch inlet or something, and maybe 2-inch inlet, 1.5 inch outlet. I don't know, it's a big pump. Like this thing's capable of like 114 or 117 gallons a minute, which just seems ridiculous. I'm no expert on liquid fertilizer on planters. We've only ever ran dry, so this is all fairly new to me, and people I've worked for, it was only dry. But on a 6-row planter, I don't honestly understand why you would need such a big pump. Like this thing, I mean, it would empty your tank so quick if you really need that much capacity. So I'm guessing it was like a sprayer pump or something and someone threw it on there. And if you had a bigger tractor with better hydraulics, maybe it would work. But the problem is the tractor we're going to be pulling this with, it's an International 966. Those hydraulics were never really meant to run pumps. So running them off of a remote, your hydraulics are probably going to get hot. You'd almost, I think on those, you have to like drill a hole in the, I think there's a plate or something you can actually drill a hole and put a port in for like a tank return. But to run that just through a remote, I think you're asking for problems. And for a 6-row planter, I don't feel like it would even be worth it. So that's why pump's for sale if anyone wants it. But I just don't feel like it's going to work for us. So the heart of the liquid fertilizer system after the pump was basically, it's a Raven. It's a SCS 440, if anyone's familiar with those. It's a pretty common older sprayer control. And then we've got the flow control valve. We've got a boom shutoff valve, and then an actual flow meter. So this thing was pretty slick, and I tested it. It actually all works. The control works, the boom isolation valve, the flow control valve, it all works, it functions. But unfortunately, I just think for a 6-row planter, it's just kind of overly complicated for what you need. And this is probably more so set up for a bigger planter or something. I mean, I think it would work. I kind of wanted to get it to work, but you know, cost-wise, it really makes sense to have some huge pump on here to use this when there's better setups, I guess, for that. And where I'm going with that is the little DC electric pumps that basically you just can vary the voltage to them, and that'll adjust the pressure. And then you're putting all of your fertilizer through orifices, and that's kind of how you're metered. And then you just pick the orifice kind of depending on the application rate. And there's a lot of different companies that make them, like L&D, Daltmeyer Sales. There's probably a couple other ones. I think there's one that starts with an S. I can't think of it right now. They all have those setups. And, you know, honestly, cost-wise, you can get the whole, they make a little tower with the pump, a strainer filter, and even like the red ball monitors on it. Everything basically ready to go from your tank to your rows. Besides the orifices, you kind of have to get that depending on what you need for an application rate. But, you know, like for $1,000. So compare that to this. And if anyone's priced out these components, unless you have this stuff laying around, I don't know. It just seems like a lot of money here for what you're trying to do with it. So, you know, if anyone's got any feedback, ever seen this done, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Or if you've got a good source for like a electric fertilizer setup, because I'm kind of thinking that's what we're going to go to. I'd be curious to hear about that. So, you know, unfortunately, this stuff, it was kind of the selling point of the planter, but now that the pump won't work, it's kind of, and the tank was bad, so it's kind of like starting at square one. And the price I paid for the planter was kind of having a fertilizer setup on it. So definitely a learning experience, but just something that, you know, make sure if you're going to look at equipment, it's going to work on your, you know, whatever tractor you're going to pull it with. So there's that. And then here's the monitor, old Dickie John monitor. It does work, tested all that out, so that's good. You know, it's simple. It doesn't do much, but for us, you know, we're just a little hobby farm. It's just, this is all basically for fun right now, and it'll work. We don't need anything fancy. I just want to make sure I'm basically putting seed in the ground. Sure, I'd love to have something that could tell me, you know, population, singulation, all that. But again, at that price point, am I seeing a difference at the end of the year? You know, that much to pay for itself. So this will work just fine. And then the other thing we had to do, we did have to replace one sensor on that, oh, what is it, number 6 row, I believe. So this is what a sensor in a John Deere 7000 series looks like. Now this is what you'd call a low rate. I believe the high rates have, they're a little bit different. I think they have an extra sensor or something. So the difference is like low rate would be like corn, but high rate, if you are planting soybeans and you had a monitor that did monitor like population, singulation, things like that, those seeds, you know, are dropping, you know, past the sensor so quick, because you got to remember this thing's like this, and the seeds are coming through the seed tube like that, and those seeds are going so quick that you have to have the high rate to be able to accurately count that. So just keep that in mind. And the other thing is you can't mix them. So if you're running a monitor and you've got all high rates or all low rates, you got to stick with that. So if you're going to switch them, you got to switch all 6 rows or however many rows your planter has. But just, you know, something most people probably know, but kind of learning with this that that's how it works. So as parts come in, I'll try to get some more videos, and once I know the snow's all gone, I don't have to have the truck full of vehicles, and get the planter back in the little shop here at the house, and we'll start digging into it, try to get a fertilizer set up on it. I think I'm going to try to get the new tanks and brackets coming, and then look at getting a fertilizer set up. So, you know, this year we are doing all soybeans, so it's kind of, I don't know if we need the fertilizer setup. I kind of like to have it working in case we do want to put starter down, but, you know, if it's a make or break deal, it might not happen. But we'll see. Try to get it working, but kind of want to show everyone what we got going on here and the latest project. So stay tuned, and hopefully we'll have more to come.